Hello and welcome to Game Squared. I'm Hatter, and well, recently I've noticed that in terms of older decks like Wander Ideas, people will typically just go, "Hey, what deck do I build for this ruler?" or "How does this ruler work?" or "What combos with this ruler?" Because a lot of the older rulers don't have a lot of information on them. Because the tournaments from that time are pretty hard to find, and even then, not many of the rulers were used. So there's a lot of untapped potential and creativity that could be used. And so I decided that I'm going to go through every ruler from the beginning being Grim, not Valhalla, and my reasons for that are Valhalla is too far removed and can't be played in Wanderer. I might touch on it at some point if it becomes relevant, like outside just a couple people who can buy the Valhalla cards, but aside from that, I'm going to be starting from the very first Grim Cluster and onward. Now, Pandora actually has the slot as far as serial goes. However, I'm starting with Dracula because there's another Pandora that comes later on, and I'm going to do both at the same time. But, to start with, let's get into the ruler, Alucard, and the J-ruler, Dracula, in what I have decided to title Ruler 101. Let's get right into it. Alright, to start off with, Alucard, the Dark Noble. J-activate, pay 0, play this ability only if you control a vampire resonator and a resonator was put into a graveyard from your opponent's field this turn. Clean, cut, dry, simple. Admittedly, it's a bit easier now than it was originally, because originally you basically played his one tribal lady and prayed to God that you killed something. Nowadays, with the ease of access of kill spells and the like, it's really a lot easier to do this than it was before. So that 0 J-activate cost can actually come into play pretty early. Because you can kill something as early as turn 2, or even turn 1 if you're tricky. However, turn 1 you're going to want to drop a vampire, obviously. And then he has a rest ability. Target resonator gains 0 minus 300 until end of turn. This is pretty cool because there are a lot of resonators out there that are just above the curve of what would be like True Bladeable or Flames of the Outer World, you know. And he can bring them right back down. Plus, if you abuse his ability using Flute's Water Dragon or Piggies to recover him, you can potentially kill much larger things, and that's pretty cool. It's really, you gotta kind of keep your control mindset with it. However, if you have some of the newer cards, like I said, Water Dragon or Piggy, you can really abuse it. Like, use water, for example, if you just have Water Dragon, you call stone with Water Dragon, then you wait until before your next recovery phase, you use it, give something minus 300, and then after that, you call a stone with Flute's Water Dragon again, and then you rest Alucard again to give something a total minus 600. And I think that is pretty neat, and there is definitely something, some kind of tricksy combo that I think you could do with it. Specifically, perhaps, separation of body and soul. Yeah, that one. The thing that kills a thing if its attack or defense is different. But, say you do kill one of their resonators whilst controlling a vampire. He will flip into the dreaded Lord Dracula, the demonic one. A 1000/1000 flying imperishable ruler. That by itself is pretty cool, because imperishable is obviously really good, and flying makes it really easy to get damage through. But what's even better is his next ability. Whenever a resonator is put into a graveyard from your opponent's field, if it was dealt damage by this card this turn, put it into your field under your control. It gains Nightmare and Vampire in addition to its own race. That is so cool! Because if they chump block it, you're just going to get that chump blocker. And if that chump blocker has an enter effect, you're going to get to use it. That's amazing. That is so cool. And if he manages to kill something through some sort of like tricksy nonsense, like you debuff it and then you swing into it and it's a decent sized resonator, you'd now have one of their good cards. That's so cool. Especially when you combine him with Regalia and other things that allow you to boost his attack and defense. They're always going to be afraid of blocking. Because if you manage to get the thing that blocked them, it's always going to just really mess up their board. So that by itself is a very good ability and really abusable with some cards later. Now let's get into those cards right now. I'm going to start with the Resonators, but then we'll get into the Chants. However, at the very end of the Resonators, I am going to show you guys a combo that I found that is just really nice with one of his Resonators. Obviously, these are all vampires, because he wants you to have a vampire at all times when you kill something. It's necessary. And with the recent just load of vampires that they've been printing, it is actually possible to get at vampire out and kill something as early as turn 2. Now, to start with, we're going to go for his Bait Resonator, Servant of Vampire, a 200/200 vampire for 1 darkness. It has the ability, as your opponent plays a spell or ability targeting a vampire you control, any vampire, not just vampire resonators, he or she must choose this card as one of the targets if able. So, basically, they have to kill him before they can kill Drac, or before they can kill any of your other vampires. It's a really cool, he's just a lightning rod. However, because he's a lightning rod, he's really obvious and out there. So if they've got like a lightning bolt or some sort of quick ping ability, like a Tama or a Familiar of Holy Wind, they can burst him pretty easily. But he does make them do that, just as a nice thing. Like making them spend resources to kill a 1-drop is pretty good, in my opinion. Next up, we have another 1-drop vampire, Servant of the Mikage. A 300/300 for 1 darkness. When this card enters your field, put a +100/+100 counter on target resonator. If your opponent controls a special magic stone, which this is Wanderer, so they're probably going to, unless you're facing like mono green elves or some kind of nonsense blazer. Then you can put 2 +1/+1 counters on that resonator instead. He's really cool because later game, he can buff your stronger resonators and just give them that extra oomph that they need. Or he can come in on turn 1 as a 500/500, which is pretty freaking awesome. Because as a 5/5, that early in the game, there's a good chance that he's going to be able to swing into something and kill it. So, as far as that goes, that's really nice. But, aside from that, let's get into the 2-drops. Starting with Vampire Bard. This card allows you to potentially do that turn 2 flip. It is a 500/400 vampire for 1 darkness and 1 void. When this card enters the field, it deals 300 damage to target player or resonator. You gain 300 life. Now, if you have somehow, like, say you're playing a green-black Drac deck, if you've played that Sacred Elf on your turn 1 with a Stone and Black Silence and drop this turn 2, and then hit like a Tama or a Familiar of Holy Wind or a Sacred Elf or an Elf token, just any resonator really with the 300 damage, you will then have a vampire and have killed one of their things. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Just early flipping Drac is super strong because then you're just stealing their stuff and there's not much they can do unless they get that card that we don't talk about. That's 2 darkness. And just ruin the J-Ruler game. But regardless, having just that potential to ping something and then gain the life, or ping your opponent if you're towards the later game and you're just trying to get that last bit of damage through, is really nice. Then we have Laura the Bloodspeaker, the Tribal Vampire Search card, a 300/300 for 1 darkness and 1, which was good at the time, but its enter ability is what's really worth it. Search your main deck for a vampire resonator, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your main deck. You can use this to search out any of your vampires that you might need at the current moment. Say you need a Servant of Vampire because you know they've got a kill spell for your Drac, or you want to search out, say, a Carmilla for just that later game sort of thing. It's a card that's always going to be pretty relevant. And it works especially well when you've got Arya, the Last Vampire. a 2 darkness and 1 for a 700/700 vampire. When this card is put into a graveyard from your field, put target vampire card with total cost 2 or less from your graveyard into your hand. So that gets your Lauras, that gets your Vampire Bards, that gets your Servants of the Mikage, that gets your Servants of the Vampire. Basically just all your stuff, you can use it again. And because it's into your hand, you can then play Laura for her, because she's got the old style enter ability, so you have to play her from your hand. And that's pretty sweet. Also, she's just a 700/700 body. And say if you play a Servant of Mikage after her, she'll be a 900/900 body. Just a really nice body that that replaces herself on death. Is cool. Then we have his ultimate Resonator card, the one designed for Dracula by Dracula. Carmilla, the Queen of Vampires. An 800/800 Resonator for 4, 2 Darkness and 2 Void. Admittedly, those stat lines are a bit low for what a 4 cost is, but her ability more than makes up for it. Enter, destroy target non-vampire Resonator. If your J-Ruler is Alucard, and the Resonator destroyed this way is human, put it into the field under your control. It loses all races and becomes a vampire. Humans are more relevant than you'd think. There's some cards that are humans that you're like, oh, I guess that is a human. Well, I'll take that. That's pretty cool. But her main draw is she destroys any Resonator. It's not cost limited as long as it's a non-vampire, which unless you're in the mirror match, you're probably not going to see any. And she herself is a vampire. So she triggers Alucard's judgment just by being her and doing her thing. That in itself, it makes her invaluable in a Dracula deck. But then we're going to talk about the final Vampire Resonator that I think is really cool and combos really well with another card. Elizabeth, the Shadow Princess of Blood. She's a 200/900 vampire for 2 darkness and 1. And she has the ability, when a Resonator is put into a graveyard from your opponent's field, recover this card, and it gains plus 400, 0 until end of turn. So every time one of your opponent's things dies, she gets to recover. That means if they chump block her, if they block her and then you kill something else with like a stoning to death, or if you just like block with her, kill something, she'll recover. It's amazing, and she gets more powerful with everyone. But then you pull in the combo piece, Blood of the Mikage, a chant for 1 darkness. Target J Resonator you control gains plus 800/800 in precision until end of turn. At the next end of turn, destroy it. So you give her plus 800/800, turning her into a 1,1700 Resonator. And then you give her precision, so you can swing into their entire board. With her defense, she's probably not going to die from killing 2 or even 3 of their things. And then she gets to swing for a massive amount because she's gaining an attack every time she kills something. Then she just swings for 2,000 plus into your opponent's face. And if you happen to have more than 1 Blood of the Mikage and they've got a full board, you can go ahead and layer them onto Elizabeth just to get that extra defense so that you can go ahead and wipe their entire board and then smack them for like 3,000. It's amazing. It's such a good combo and I love it. But that brings us into the chants. Starting with basically my favorite chant in a Dracula deck, Blood-Sucking Impulse. 1 darkness and 1 for a chant instant. Target vampire you control deals damage equal to its attack to another target Resonator. Then you gain life equal to half that much damage. So, you have Drac. He's a 1,000/1,000. You play Blood-Sucking Impulse. Drac deals 1,000 damage to something, probably killing it. And because he dealt the damage, you then get that thing. Plus, you gain 500 life, just as a side bonus. Also, it's rounded up. So if you've got 1 plus 100 counter on Drac, you're gaining 600 life instead of 500. So that's pretty cool. It's really neat. It works with him. It lets you basically kill something and steal it for 2 at instant speed. I love it. It's beautiful. And then we have the next kill card, Power Absorption. 2 darkness for a quick cast chant that deals 600 damage to target J Resonator. But for every additional vampire you control, and Drac on his ruler and J ruler side is a vampire, it's going to deal 100 extra damage for each of them. So just having Alucard as your ruler makes this a 600 damage spell. That in itself is really good. But then it has the effect of putting a +100/+100 counter on every vampire you control, including Drax's ruler side. So early game, you're playing this, you're blowing up one of their 2 drops, maybe one of their 3 drops. If you have one or two vampires out, this is going to do like 900 to 1,000 damage. And you're triggering Drax's judgment condition, and you're putting him +1/+1 counter, so he's even bigger on his J ruler side. That, in my opinion, is just delicious. Next up, we have his addition, Alvarez the Demon Castle. Vampires you control gain +2/+2. It's a vampire buff. You're running vampires, Drax a vampire, go crazy. But then it has the best ability for this edition. Pay 1 darkness, banish this card, put target vampire resonator from your graveyard into your hand. Oh look, I get my Carmilla back. Oh look, my Elizabeth is back. Oh look, I can get any one of my vampire resonators back because, I don't know. So you play these around early or mid-game, and they give you a nice little boost for that early game aggression, but then later in the game, they give you your resources back. So it's a nice investment for later on. And just that 200/200 is more relevant than you'd think, because there are a lot of trades that happen that you can turn into just your resonator wins in that scenario. Also, it makes Elizabeth a 41100, and that's nasty. Like, you don't understand the power here. But aside from that, just all the generic kill spells, Stoning to Death, Flames of the Outer World, the new ones that are dual-colored, Null, Destruction, or what have you, and Forbidden Arts. Just anything that destroys is really good in a Drac deck, so you can fulfill his condition, play your vampire, then destroy something, then flip, and get that aggression out. And then just keep flipping as you kill stuff. So that's something you really got to keep in mind. Like, say they have a very small resonator, and you're like, perhaps I should kill it. But then you think, maybe not. I'll leave it hanging right there for a moment until I have a good setup to flip Alucard, and then I'll kill it, so that I have my flip thing. It's something you always kind of gotta have in the back of your mind when you're playing Dracula. Another thing to keep in mind is that despite having Imperishable, if they don't have a resonator, you're not going to be able to flip back over. And control decks will abuse this. Because a control deck that just is killing all your vampires and doesn't play a lot of resonators themselves, except things that are notoriously difficult to kill. See, like Charlotte, or the Charlotte that gets bigger as your hand size increases. Or like an Arthur or something like that. Just keep that in mind as you're playing it. But beside from that, that's the Alucard. As far as a deck list I would run, I would probably run something like this. But remember, it's just a base. There's always room for improvement. Maybe add in red so you have the Servant of the Mikage, or Secret Messenger of the Mikage. A 3-drop that deals 400 damage to target thing for every vampire you control, which in itself is a vampire. So with this deck, you'd be dealing 800 to another resonator for 3. Fun. Or say like a green deck so you can have True Blade, so you always have that like kill. But aside from that, there's always room for improvement. Check it out. You can find the deck list in the description down below. So if you guys, that's another thing, if you guys have a Dracula list that you run, or some kind of crazy Dracula combo that you really enjoy, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments below. Or just what you thought of the card, or just what you think of the support cards for it. That'd be awesome to hear for as well. Anyway, that's been the Dracula Ruler 101. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.